I think it's important to celebrate AAPI Month in the United States because Asians are a growing population. They're 7% of the population in the United States. Now it's almost 15 and growing in the Bay Area. And I think it's also important to celebrate, so it's a learning opportunity, because too often Asians are deemed to be a monolith. We see one thing and we assume that is Asian. And while I'm sure in the course of this conversation we will see commonalities, our cultures across the continent, it's the largest continent in the world, are so very different and so unique. India has, just within that one country, 447 languages, 22 of which are officially recognized. So I think it's important to get to learn about each other, and also just in light of everything that's happened in the last 2 years. The xenophobia has never really gone away. It's always been there. But I think it's become even more prominent, as evidenced by all the violent acts that have taken place. So people don't fear what they know. And this is an opportunity for them to get to know us.
Yeah, I think also just on the fact that I think the United States has always viewed Asian Americans in a very monolithic lens. Like you said, I think there's a certain look and culture surrounding that people only associate with Asian Americans when it's so much more than that. I mean, I think the Asian American experience can be so unique because of the very vast, unique reasons people immigrate to the United States and why people settle roots and come here. And there's so much more than what we see within the media and what we portray to be Asian American versus what it actually looks like. And there isn't really a one size fits all versus what I was seeing growing up in like television and film and music and things like that. So I hope just this AAPI month and following ones, people can really start to reflect on what they view as Asian American culture and how it's so much more than just what we're taught growing up here.
I like how Supriya said, it's this is just another way to learn about each other. And then I totally agree with that. And then there's so many people that I know that's so curious about Asian cultures because it's something that they don't know, they're not familiar with. And I think it's important that we share the best of us that let everyone else to learn about or know about, and then learn about each other's culture, especially the uprising of culture shifting or combining and everything all together. I think as an artist, I feel like lots of good things can happen from there, from learning each other.
I mean, I agree with, of course, everything you all said. And for me, it's a lot of, it reminds me of who I am today because all my experiences being Asian American and my family upbringing and learning where they came from, why they immigrated. And I just feel like America is a big melting pot and we forget it, that all these different cultures, Asian cultures and all the other races that are here, I mean, we all have something to give to this country, and it's definitely very important to recognize we are who we are today because of our past. So my favorite way to celebrate AAPI, I mean, it goes on beyond this month, is always asking my family their stories about the way they grew up and how their experiences were when they first immigrated to this country, and just especially being older now. As a child, I didn't realize all the sacrifices they made to come here, and being older now, I understand what they went through and the experiences and all the stereotypes they had to get by. And my mom, for example, had to quit her job because people just weren't treating her right, and this was back in the 70s, so it was real different. So it's just great to see where she is now compared to what it was when she first moved here.
My favorite way to celebrate this month is to share stories with my colleagues, actually. Yeah, lots of my friends that just curious about lots of the stories that from my culture, and then that they don't know about, they're curious about, and then I'll tell them little stories about my culture, and yeah.
I think one of my favorite ways to celebrate AAPI Month is to eat. Especially living in the Bay Area, there's so many Asian populations that are represented in the area, and it's great, I think, just to support local businesses, especially from cultures within like the Asian community that don't get enough representation. And I think food is always a great way to connect with other people. I mean, that's how I grew up for sure in my family. And my family is all in the Bay Area, and we always have very, very thoughtful times over food and just talking with one another and learning from each other. I think within Asian culture, food is always a vehicle to learn and to share. Even if your parents can't speak English very well, or communicating can be difficult. I know a lot of myself and my like Asian friends always know that we share love through food and through feeding one another. That's very important to me for sure.
It's the same for me. One of the ways that I like to pay special attention on this month is definitely through food, trying cuisines that I might not have before, and also just kind of harkens back to when I was growing up in Chicagoland, and we would go to Chinatown so many times for holidays. And that was really one of my first introductions to that culture. We went to this small restaurant and no one spoke English. You would order by pointing at the pictures and just see what you would get. And almost every time it was something unique and wonderful. And then you got to the point where you just walked in, they waved, and they handed you your food because you were ordering the same thing over and over.
Oh, I just want to touch on what Wei mentioned earlier about like sharing stories. I think people are scared to ask questions a lot of the time because they don't want to come off as offensive, or they just don't want, they want to be like culture sensitive, and that's definitely important to do. But I also think like Asian American Pacific Heritage Month can be used as well to just open those doors, and for people to not be afraid to learn more, and to also empower like Asian American individuals who might not necessarily feel comfortable talking about their culture to share a little bit more than what we are used to growing up. I think especially within Asian cultures, or at least my experience, we're not taught to share very personal things a lot of the time. Like, we're kind of taught to just be quiet and submissive, which plays into the stereotypes about the Asian community. So I just hope that this month and every other month following this, that we learn to use our voices a little more and to be able to share a lot more as well.
To follow up on what Quincy just said, I think it's also important that this can be an opportunity for us to break down our own stereotypes that have been imposed on us. I grew up with parents who basically accepted racism as a toll to live in this country, that this was just going to happen. You were going to be the child who was told she talked weird. And so you need to work on your accent and just do your best to be able to sound like what these American children sound like. And that was drilled into my brain. And so I think a lot of us carry this thing where we are meant to feel like we need to just be okay with things. And I think this is a great opportunity to learn from each other during this time and break those stereotypes down, that no, it's okay to not be okay with something. It's okay to speak up. It's okay to ask questions. And just also going along the lines of sharing information is the only way we as a society as a whole can grow. Nothing happens if only a handful of people hoard knowledge and leave everyone in darkness. We've seen that over and over again in history. So the only way we can move forward is to share our information, share our stories, share our culture, invite others to participate in it rather than have it be a brick wall and just kind of move forward together. I think it's also, for me, why I don't necessarily have a specific plan for AAPI month or something I'm planning on, an event or something I'm planning to do, is that the holidays for my faith, I'm a practicing Hindu, the majority ones were in April, and I also need to caveat that by Hinduism is practiced in multiple ways depending on what part of the country you are from, your own family's history. So I definitely cannot be a spokesperson for this is all Hindus. This is the specific way that I was raised with a family that came from the state of Maharashtra in India. But also, it's also very jarring for me still to see the amount of representation that has continued to grow, which is lovely to see. A show that immediately comes to mind is Netflix's Never Have I Ever, and it features at the front a teenage Indian girl in an Indian family facing similar things that I remember going through when I was in high school, and I never could have imagined in the 1990s when I was a teenager that I could ever see something like this depicted on television.
I recently just, I was scooting on the street and I didn't go there on purpose, but I saw a cherry blossom festival was on in Japantown. It was so wonderful, and seeing all the cherry blossom actually on the street, and there's people selling food on it was a block off street, and then they were selling food, they were selling like different items and stuff from manga, which lots of teenagers there were like enjoying themselves, and it was a good view for me.
When it comes to working here, I really love working here, especially because I get to see, since I work in the dorms and take care of the kids in the dorms, I get to see the progression of their career. And it's amazing to watch them grow and end up hopefully in the company here or companies all over the world. And it's just something, it just brings joy to my heart to see them succeed.
I like how when we are off stage and we're chit-chatting, and then dancers will ask me, oh, what does this say in Chinese, what does it mean? And then it's sometimes like a silly thing, but it ends up we're having more conversations about like, what is this, why is this so different, and then what are those things from? And I'm very happy to talk about those things, especially stuff from my culture, to my colleagues that who is curious about. And then I just, in a moment, obviously I feel very proud, and also I feel like sharing that just makes our connection stronger, that it just keep the conversation going, and there's more conversation about cultural stuff, like where you're from and your background.
Yeah, I would say like one of my favorite things is very similar to that as well. When I get to meet people through the ballet and they get to learn my story, that's been really interesting, especially just asking like, oh, like what does your name mean? I have a Vietnamese name, and that kind of usually always gets the ball rolling, and people are always really thoughtful to learn about my background or my family's backgrounds, and just to share each other's stories and their past. It's really interesting, and there's a lot of respect for my background, more so than in other organizations that I've been at, which has been really nice. And it's cool that I don't have to mute my culture in my workspace, which I really appreciate for sure.
I just going off of that, I would agree. So one of the things that sticks with me is when I first started working here, and I needed to take time off for Diwali, and no one questioned, oh, what, why? It's like, oh, okay. It was really nice to be able to request adjustments in schedule and be offered flexibility. And it also helps that I'm part-time, so I can navigate that a bit easier. But just to be able to say that I don't have to feel like I have to hide that aspect of me, that I'm a religious person, and so as a result, there's these things that I'm navigating, and it's always been met with respect, so I really appreciate that.
My family's originally from Thailand. My dad's family's from China, and they immigrated to Thailand. So we celebrate both Chinese New Year and Thai New Year, which is great because it's more food. And Thai New Year, you run around throwing water on each other and eat more food. And Chinese New Year's, we always cooked for my grandfather who passed, and had a meal for him. And it was just I just remember growing up always having that. It was usually chicken or a duck, and we just had it there, and you pray and give your blessings and offerings to your family who passed. Yeah, it's always the food, like we said earlier. The food is, I just love food. Yeah, big time. And that's all. I'm growing up. We had our families get together, and it's just always around food. And the great thing was. I was born here in the States, so we always had all the American food, the steaks and all this stuff. And then I had an uncle who worked at a French restaurant, so we had all that. Then we had all the Asian food, all the Thai food, Chinese food, sushi. We had everything. It was great.
One thing that I definitely did not appreciate enough growing up until I was on my own is just my mother's sheer determination to make sure that we kept our culture at home, because 2 out of 3 children were born in the United States. We all spoke English at school or at work. We would speak English with each other in the house, and she resolutely refused to speak to any of us in English. If we asked her something in English, she would just pretend she didn't hear it. So as a result, I managed to hold on to 2 Indian languages that I still have full fluency in. And I also realized that because of that upbringing, it makes it so much easier to pick up bits and pieces of other languages and see how they come together, and also just have an appreciation for my culture, especially because I really didn't try to get in touch with it as much as I have until I was in my 20s. So I really, really appreciate that from her.
That reminds me of something else I definitely need to do this month, which is practice my Vietnamese. I think I could definitely use this time to get back in touch with my mother tongue. I was born in the States, but my parents are both immigrants. And just over the years, I think I've lost a lot of it. And so I definitely will use the month of May to go visit my family and try my best to not speak English, and just practice. And because I know the importance of continuing my language, and if I don't keep using it, then it might die off. And I think it's important to continue to share and to learn and to pass it on, and also teach my friends some fun terms as well. I think that's always a lot of fun when I get to teach them how to say certain things in Vietnamese or to pronounce certain foods. They always want to learn how to say food, always. Yeah, I think.
Following on your conversations about, or your comment about how hard our parents worked on trying to keep our culture, one thing that I appreciate my parents for doing that, and I kick myself all the time because I hated eating Thai food, and my mom is an amazing cook, and I just wanted Taco Bell and McDonald's all the time, and I didn't get into really enjoying Thai food until I was older, my late teens, and I don't know why, because it's so much better than Taco Bell, but yeah.
The conversation is making me think about how I think we view Asian American Heritage Month, how it's not necessary just for people who are Asian, who are born in the States, but also people who immigrate to the States, who are just living in the States. There's so much more to the story than just the term Asian American, because what does Asian American even mean? It's a lot more nuanced, and I think a lot of people usually consider for the term. And that's always the struggles of having one like term to kind of encompass like a huge group of people, for sure.
It would be great to see more South Asian dancers, Southeast Asian dancers. One of the things that I loved about this company, the very first show I saw was in 2011, and it was Posakov's Raku. And I went into it somewhat leery because of the term of what the ballet was about and the fact that it was choreographed by a Caucasian choreographer. And then I saw YY on stage, and I was completely transfixed. That was the first time I'd ever seen her dance. That was the first performance I ever saw with San Francisco Ballet. And it was one of the first times I think I'd actually seen someone Asian doing something like that, where it wasn't Flower Drum Song or The King and I or Miss Saigon. And I would love to, within ballet, continue to see more Asians doing those kind of leading roles and have it expand out even further, that everyone of every race can have that kind of talent, and it would be great to be able to have the opportunity to see that on stage.
I would like if the ballet world could be as diverse as the community that it represents, for sure. Not just on the stage, but off the stage. I think it'd be great to see a lot more Asian culture represented on the stage, and a greater diversity of it, not just necessarily the ones that we've seen from time to time again. Because I think when you are an audience member and you get to see it, you're like, feel represented and you feel heard, especially in like super diverse cities like San Francisco. Also, I think for dancers and for artists, when you get to see or perform in something that you resonate with yourself, I think it's a lot more empowering, and it will just encourage people who might not have ever been interested in encouraging dance or music or things like that to give it a try. And yeah.
I have a story that happened the first time around. I was doing Nutcracker Prince, and when I left the stage, there was a Asian mom with her son, and her son was very shy, and her mom was saying, "It was really nice to see you as a prince," and my son was very inspired, and he said one day maybe I could be the prince. And then I was very happy to hear that, just sort of like by doing pretty much nothing but just my job, and then showing people that how the way we look, we can also playing leading roles. But I'm hoping that one day this will never be a conversation that bring up. It should be just a very common and comfortable thing for people to say, "Oh, he's a prince," and then could be the next leading role as well. So.
When it comes to representation, I think the hardest thing for me was in Thailand. Growing up as a musician, in Thailand, you don't. Well, I grew up here, but in Thailand, the culture, you don't have professional musicians. That's not a job. You do it because you're supposed to, but you got to be a doctor, lawyer, or go to school and not be a musician. So I think it was really hard for my parents to accept the fact that I was a musician as a profession. I think it's the same in the ballet world. I feel like ballet in Thailand, I'm sure in other Southeast Asian countries, it's just not a big thing. There's no major companies don't tour there. And so I feel like it's going to be hard to bring people from those parts of Asia into the world if they're never seeing it. So, I mean, it'd be awesome to see more companies tour in those areas if it's ever possible. just to give exposure. Because when I toured for the first time in Thailand as a musician, it was just shocking to family members to see me doing that as a job instead of all the other career paths that most Asians follow, I guess, in that culture.